everyone, and welcome back to Hockey 101. Last episode, we talked about the Q. That was a fantastic conversation. We sprinkled in some USHL dialogue as well. Go back and watch that if you haven't. Today, we're talking about the dub, the WHL. However, first, I do want to acknowledge something we failed to acknowledge in the previous episode, that our proud American boys have unfortunately fallen victim to the wiles of European golf. And to that, we say, you boys tried your best, but unfortunately they got the better of you in the Ryder Cup this year. We couldn't defend home soil at Bethpage. We probably should have let the greens die out a little more, so they're rolling about like a 4. That really would have messed with their heads, but unfortunately, here we are, back on a Tuesday, but ready to talk hockey. And with that being said, I would first like to welcome in a man who, despite working at a golf course, has played an embarrassingly small amount of golf over the past couple of weeks. It's Dan Kay. Dan, welcome back to the show.
I sell memberships. I don't get to enjoy them, Lucas. That's what I do, okay? It's a wonderful life. Living. I get to look outside every once in a while like a sad dog looking for its owners and stare at the 18th green on the South Course, but I don't get to get out there often. But I'll tell you what, Lucas, what we're going to be talking about today, the WHL, episode 1 yesterday, we talked about the Q, right? When you talk about French-speaking portions of Canada, it's tougher to bring in American products, right? Us Americans, I took French for 5 years, you as well, Lucas. We don't do well with the language. En français is no, no, no for all of us here in the U.S. at times. But Bob, a league that is in prime position to grab American players and bring them across the border has done so, and it has done it in bunches, and that's what we're talking about tonight. Bob Turo, the dub. Take it away. How are they doing when it comes to Americans and Europeans joining the squad?
You know, guys, something we should have done the other night was talk about how the CHL has divided up America for drafting hockey players. When I first started out in the Ontario Hockey League with the Sioux Greyhounds, we could go to California, we could go to New England, we could go to Florida, we could go to Minnesota. And the CHL was really smart. They said, guys, why are we spending all this money to go all over the place when we can just divide up America? Yes, I said that. We can divide. Canada is dividing up America. And so what they did was they said, Western Hockey League, anything west of the Mississippi is your property. Quebec, anybody in New England is your property. In Ontario, anybody east of the Mississippi, all the way down to Florida, with the exception of New England, is your property. And so you have pockets in America that are really growing hockey players right now. And one of those areas, because of a guy by the name of Wayne Gretzky, who went out to California, and you've got teams in Texas, and they're all developing hockey players. And the Western Hockey League is starting to take advantage. And I think we need to dive into the numbers. And I'm just going to go back over here and take a look at where the Americans in the CHL were last year in the WHL. They had 29 Americans. Guys, they've 3x'd it this year.
Yep.
There's 86 playing in the Western Hockey League in their 22 teams. Crazy number. If we go by team, and I'm just going to blow this up a little bit so everybody can see it, and then we'll dig into the players. Let me just go back just a little bit. Here we go. In 2004 versus 2005, you can see who really has dipped into the pool. Calgary and Edmonton, 2 big markets that would be attractive for Americans, went from 2 to 7 each. Medicine Hat, which just lost Gavin McKenna to Penn State, they dipped into the market for 7. Look at Penticton, the new team in the WHL. They went right to 8. A couple of other notables here. Seattle surprised me. They had 0 in 2024. They have 0 in 2025.
Wow.
But then you go to the leader, Wenatchee. They had 8 last year, and that wasn't enough this year. They're at 11. So 86 versus 29 the year before. How were those players made up? Well, you can take a look in column H here. You've got NHL draft choices. Or you've got the leading scorer who just left the national development team in for the United States, J.P. Hurlbert, who left. Another NHL draft choice. Another NHL draft choice. These are people that they have decided that it's either they either got drafted in the WHL as an American, they went there and got drafted, or they're leaving a league like the USHL to get drafted. Take a look at where they came from. USHL, North American League, USHL, an American in the AJ. We've got youth players from Sioux Falls Power, Dallas Elite. I mean, they're all over the place that these players are coming from. One thing that we saw in Quebec was a lot of prep school players, and we talked about Shattuck. Here's a Shattuck player. There's another Shattuck player. More USHL players, more Shattuck players. Like, it's just a march north of the border. Here's the last thing I want to point out. Well, not the last thing. You go back up here and we pointed it out the other night. What color did we call this color? Americans new to the WHL, Lucas?
It's like a burnt orange.
A burnt
like
orange.
Texas University orange here. University
There
of
you
Texas.
go. So anybody who's colored that color is new to the WHL. Anybody who is yellow is a returning American who played in the WHL last year. And anybody who is green is a European. Now, they don't count. And we saw in Quebec where they had a bunch of them last year. Here we have two that left the USHL. They're both NCAA commitments, and they decided that they were on their way. One last thing, and I'll take any questions or we'll have a little discussion about this. There are a bunch of players that have already signed education packages in the Western League, but they're not ready to play. And you can see their birth year. 010s, because they have a younger draft out there. They drafted 10s while the OHL drafted 09s this year. And you can just see they're not ready, but they're going to be there the following year. And you can see throughout the country, west of the Mississippi, where those players all played. There's some notes over here. All of this can be found on the Dan K website with the NCAA CHL tracker. You'll find that and way more. One last thing, and we'll just go here. This is by age, and all of this will be put on the USA Flips to CHL page. You can see the youth, no 10s, of course, too young, but a bunch of 09s. And where did they come from? Chicago Mission, Chicago Reapers, Detroit Honeybake, Long Island Gulls, high school hockey. That's one thing I'm really noticing. Kids starting to leave high school early to go to the Western Hockey League. That nut has really not been cracked that much by the USHL. It looks like that nut could be cracked right now. Look at two big schools, Two Rivers and Hill Murray, that are supplying players. So it's 86 from 29 guys. Like, oh my God. All saying that the Western Hockey League is better to prepare me for the college that I'm going to go to, or to prepare me to get drafted into the NHL and a potential NHL career.
Now, Bob, the question I have, we've been talking, I think, as Americans, Lucas and I, and you as a kind of a split Canadian-American at this point in life, you know, dual Canadian-American, Tim Hortons American, I would call you. But I feel like we get so lost in the USHL conversation. I want to look north of the border now, right? what effect is the American population starting to populate the dub, the O, the Q? What is that doing to the Canadian players that used to take those spots? What are we seeing there? Where are they going?
I think what you're seeing, guys, is they're heading to other leagues. Listen, this is a merit-based sport, and the CHL is very similar to the National Hockey League. If you ask an NHL general manager or you ask an NHL head coach, do you want your players coming from the CHL, the NCAA, or Europe? They would say to you, I want players who will help me win hockey games, win championships, and help me get my next contract so I can continue to pay my mortgage. That is the way the CHL approaches hockey players. You know, we're looking at Americans here. Take a look at what the CHL did this year, where they went from 2 Europeans to 3 Europeans, edging out possibly, well, definitely, more Canadians. They just want the best players, guys. They don't look at it from a nationality standpoint. They look at it from, I want the best players that are heading to the National Hockey League, okay, and can help me win hockey games.
The data continues to show, I think, a lot of what we've been talking about. And there are some things, like in the previous episode, we issued an apology because we were slightly off. But I think a lot of what's being borne out by the data shows that players are taking advantage. We knew they would. We knew that there would be a sizable contingent of players who would take advantage of new opportunities. Hockey is getting more and more competitive across the board. That is nowhere more true than at the highest levels of the game, as players continue to look for more and more slight advantages, the ability to get to D1 hockey, the ability to further their career, and a little bit of nervousness on the parts of parents, the parts of players, the parts of advisors and coaches, always looking for the best opportunity for their players. New avenues are open, new paths are being tread, and we've got one more group to talk about in the next episode. We've talked about the Q. This was the dub. We've got the O coming up next. If you're watching this on Tuesday, the O is coming out tomorrow. Don't worry about it. If you're not watching this on a Tuesday, any Tuesday, guess what? You can go watch it right now. These episodes are quick. We're firing them at you. Go get another one. Get some more water. Sit back down. Watch our episode on the O. For Dan, for Bob, for myself, this has been Hockey 101. I'm WHL.